It's 11 at night, and you promised yourself you'd go to sleep an hour ago. But here you are, thumbs sliding up the screen, watching one more disaster unfold, reading one more outrage, clicking one more headline that makes your chest tighten. You tell yourself, this is the last one. Just one more check to see if anything changed, if the situation got better or worse. But nothing ever really changes, does it? You just keep scrolling, and scrolling. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice asks, why am I doing this? Why can't I stop? Why does bad news feel so impossible to look away from? Today we're going to uncover the disturbing psychology behind doomscrolling and why your brain treats the news cycle like a slot machine you can't walk away from. We'll explore how operant conditioning has turned your phone into a device that literally rewires your behavior, how confirmation bias keeps you trapped in cycles of anxiety and outrage, and why the very systems designed to inform you are actually designed to addict you. Most importantly, we'll discover why breaking free isn't about willpower. It's about understanding the invisible forces pulling your strings. Let's start with something you've probably experienced but never fully understood. You pick up your phone, just for a second, just to check one thing. Maybe you're waiting for a message. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you're anxious and looking for distraction. You open an app, any app, and suddenly 20 minutes have vanished. You've scrolled through hundreds of posts, dozens of headlines, watched videos you didn't care about, read articles that made you angry or scared or sad. And when you finally put the phone down, you don't feel better. You feel worse, drained, anxious, guilty. And yet, an hour later, you'll do it again. This isn't weakness. This isn't lack of discipline. This is one of the most sophisticated behavior control systems ever created, and it's operating on you every single day. The foundation of this system is something psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered nearly a century ago. He called it operant conditioning, and it's the process by which behaviors are strengthened or weakened based on their consequences. Skinner ran experiments with animals, particularly pigeons and rats, placing them in boxes where they could press a lever to receive food. At first, he gave food every single time the lever was pressed. The animals learned quickly. But then something fascinating happened. When Skinner switched to giving food only sometimes, on an unpredictable schedule, the animals became obsessed. They pressed the lever compulsively, far more than when the reward was guaranteed. They couldn't stop because their brains had learned that the next press might be the one that pays off. This is called a variable ratio schedule, and it's the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. You don't know when the reward is coming, so you keep trying, keep pulling, keep checking. Just one more time. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and turn on bell notification. This helps spreading the knowledge to others. Now ask yourself, what does your phone do when you open it? Sometimes there's a notification. Sometimes there's a new message. Sometimes there's a post that makes you laugh or a headline that shocks you. But most of the time, there's nothing particularly interesting. Just enough of nothing to keep you looking. Just enough of something to make you come back. Every time you refresh your feed, every time you pull down to see if something new appeared, you're pressing Skinner's lever. And the platforms that built these apps know exactly what they're doing. They employ psychologists, neuroscientists, and engineers whose entire job is to figure out how to keep you engaged, how to keep you coming back, how to keep you scrolling past the point where you wanted to stop. Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist who helped build some of these systems before becoming one of their loudest critics, has explained that your phone is not a tool that serves you. It's a slot machine in your pocket, optimized to capture and hold your attention. The companies behind these apps aren't selling you a product. They're selling your attention to advertisers. And the longer they can keep you scrolling, the more ads they can show you, the more data they can collect about you, the more money they make. Your time, your focus, your mental energy, these are the commodities being traded. And just like a casino, the house always wins. But why does this work so powerfully with news, especially negative news? The answer lies in something psychologist Roy Baumeister has extensively researched. Our brains have a negativity bias. For most of human evolution, paying attention to threats kept you alive. The ancestor who noticed the rustling grass and thought, "predator," survived longer than the one who thought, "probably nothing." So over thousands of generations, our brains became wired to prioritize negative information over positive. Bad news grabs your attention faster, holds it longer, and leaves a deeper emotional imprint than good news. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature. But in the modern world, where we're no longer scanning the savannah for lions, this ancient survival mechanism has been hijacked by technology. News organizations figured this out long before the internet existed. "If it bleeds, it leads," has been a journalism mantra for decades. But social media and 24-hour news cycles have taken this to an extreme level. Algorithms track what you click on, what you linger over, what makes you react. And they've learned that fear, anger, and outrage keep you engaged far better than calm, balanced information. So they show you more of it. Not because it's the most important, not because it's the most accurate, but because it works, because it keeps you scrolling, because it keeps you coming back. Now layer confirmation bias on top of this. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his work on how humans make decisions, showed that once we form a belief, our brains actively search for information that confirms it, while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts it. This happens automatically, below the level of conscious awareness. You don't choose to do this. Your brain does it to protect your sense of being right, of being consistent, of having a stable worldview. And social media algorithms amplify this tenfold. They learn what kind of content you engage with, what perspectives you agree with, what narratives you click on. And then they show you more of the same. If you tend to click on political content that leans one direction, the algorithm notices and starts feeding you more and more extreme versions of that perspective. If you engage with health scares, you'll see more health scares. If you react to financial doom predictions, you'll be shown an endless stream of economic collapse warnings. The algorithm doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about balance. It cares about engagement. And the fastest way to keep you engaged is to show you information that confirms what you already believe and triggers strong emotions. Fear, anger, righteousness, disgust. These emotions don't make you click away, they make you click more. Adam Alter, a psychologist who has studied behavioral addiction extensively, points out that doomscrolling combines several addiction triggers at once. There's the variable reward schedule we talked about earlier. There's the negativity bias that makes bad news irresistible. There's the confirmation bias that creates echo chambers where your beliefs are constantly validated. But there's also something else: social validation. When you share a post, when you comment, when you react, you're not just consuming information, you're participating in a social ritual. And when others respond to what you've shared, when they like your comment or argue with you, you get a small hit of dopamine. Your brain registers this as social connection, even though it's often shallow, performative, and designed to keep you inside the app. The platforms have also mastered something called the Zeigarnik effect, a psychological phenomenon where unfinished tasks stick in your mind more than completed ones. Have you ever noticed how social media feeds never end? How there's always more content below, always something else to see, always a cliffhanger, always a notification you haven't checked yet. This is intentional. If the feed had a clear endpoint, you'd reach it and feel done. You'd close the app and move on with your day. But because there's always more, always something unfinished, always something you might be missing, your brain treats it like an incomplete task. And incomplete tasks nag at you. They pull you back. They make you open the app just to finish, even though finishing is impossible by design. This is why you check your phone first thing in the morning and last thing before bed. This is why you feel phantom vibrations, imagining notifications that aren't there. This is why you can't watch a movie, have a conversation, or eat a meal without reaching for your device. The behavior has been conditioned into you through thousands of tiny reinforcements. Your brain has learned that checking brings rewards, sometimes. And because you can't predict when those rewards will come, you keep checking. Over and over, even when it makes you miserable. Now let's talk about news alerts specifically. These are among the most insidious tools in the attention economy. A breaking news notification appears on your screen, interrupting whatever you were doing. It's almost always something negative: a disaster, a scandal, a threat, a conflict. Your brain's threat detection system fires up immediately. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods your system. Your heart rate increases slightly. You feel a spike of anxiety or anger. And what do? You click. You need to know more. You need context. You need to see if the situation is as bad as the headline suggests. But here's what happens next. The article you click on doesn't resolve your anxiety. It intensifies it. It's written to keep you engaged, which means it often raises more questions than it answers. It includes speculation, worst-case scenarios, and just enough ambiguity to make you wonder, what if? And at the bottom of the article, there are links to related stories. More disasters, more threats, more reasons to worry. You click one, then another, and suddenly you're down a rabbit hole, consuming information that makes you feel worse with every passing minute. Psychologist Sherry Turkle has written extensively about how technology changes our relationship with ourselves and others. She points out that the constant stream of alerts and updates creates what she calls a state of continuous, partial attention. You're never fully present in any moment because part of your mind is always monitoring for the next interruption, the next update, the next thing that might require your attention. This doesn't just affect your focus, it affects your emotional regulation. When you're in this state constantly, your baseline anxiety rises. You become more reactive, more irritable, more prone to jumping to conclusions. And because you're consuming news in fragmented bursts rather than deep, thoughtful analysis, you rarely develop real understanding. You just accumulate bits of decontextualized information that feed your fears without helping you make sense of the world. The partisan nature of modern media makes this even worse. Most news sources now cater to specific ideological audiences, not because journalists have suddenly become more biased, but because the business model demands it. When you're competing for attention in an oversaturated market, the most effective strategy is to tell your audience what they want to hear, in a way that makes them feel smart and righteous for believing it. This creates what researchers call filter bubbles, or echo chambers, where you're primarily exposed to information and perspectives that align with your existing views. And when you do encounter opposing viewpoints, they're usually presented in the most extreme, least charitable form possible, designed to trigger outrage rather than understanding. This is why political polarization has increased so dramatically over the past 2 decades. It's not that people have fundamentally changed, it's that the information environment has changed. When everyone consumed news from a handful of relatively neutral sources, there was at least some shared reality, some common ground. But now, different groups are essentially living in different informational universes, consuming completely different sets of facts, interpreting events through completely different narratives. And because confirmation bias makes us trust information that aligns with what we already believe, these separate realities become self-reinforcing. The more you consume content from sources that share your perspective, the more convinced you become that your perspective is obviously correct, and anyone who disagrees must be either stupid or malicious. Doomscrolling feeds on this dynamic. You're not just scrolling through random information. You're scrolling through information carefully selected to trigger your existing fears, validate your existing beliefs, and keep you emotionally activated. And the more activated you are, the more you scroll. The cycle feeds itself. You feel anxious, so you check the news to see if there's something you should be worried about. The news gives you more things to worry about, which makes you more anxious, which makes you check more often. It becomes a compulsion, an automatic behavior that happens before you've consciously decided to do it. So how do you break free? The first step is recognizing that this isn't a personal failing. You're not weak for struggling with this. You're human, and your human brain is being exploited by systems specifically designed to exploit it. The behaviors you want to change weren't formed through your conscious choices. They were shaped through systematic behavioral conditioning, which means changing them requires more than just deciding to do better. It requires changing your environment, changing your relationship with technology, and building new habits that aren't as easily hijacked. Start by removing the triggers. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Every notification is an interruption, a lever pull, an invitation to check. When your phone is silent, when it's not constantly demanding your attention, the compulsion to check it weakens dramatically. You might feel anxious about this at first. What if you miss something important? But ask yourself honestly, when was the last time a notification contained information that genuinely required your immediate attention? Most of what we're notified about can wait hours, or even days without any real consequence. Next, create friction between you and the behavior you want to change. If doom scrolling happens primarily on certain apps, move those apps off your home screen. Put them in folders. Make them harder to access. Better yet, delete them from your phone entirely and only access them through a web browser on your computer. This adds just enough effort to the process that it breaks the automatic pattern. You can still check if you really want to, but you have to consciously choose it rather than doing it reflexively. Set specific times for news consumption. Instead of checking constantly throughout the day, decide that you'll catch up on news once in the morning and once in the evening, for a limited time period. 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but not all day. Not first thing when you wake up, not last thing before you sleep. When you contain news consumption to specific windows, you prevent it from bleeding into every moment of your day. And interestingly, you'll find that you don't actually miss anything important. The truly significant information will still be there when you check. The rest was just noise anyway. Replace the behavior with something else. Your brain has learned that picking up your phone provides stimulation, distraction, and reward. If you simply try to stop without offering an alternative, you'll feel a void, and you'll likely fall back into the old pattern. So when you notice the urge to scroll, do something else. Read a book. Go for a walk. Call someone you care about. Make something with your hands. The goal isn't to fill every moment with productivity. It's to retrain your brain to find satisfaction and stimulation from sources that don't leave you feeling drained and anxious. Practice metacognition, which means thinking about your own thinking. When you find yourself reaching for your phone, pause. Just for a second. Ask yourself what you're looking for. Are you bored? Anxious? Avoiding something? Lonely? Most of the time, doom scrolling isn't actually about the news. It's about emotional regulation. You're using the scroll as a way to manage or avoid your feelings. And once you recognize that, you can address the real need instead of treating the symptom. If you're anxious, scrolling through disasters won't make you less anxious. It will make it worse. But you might not realize that until you start paying attention to the pattern. Understand that you don't need to know everything happening in the world in real time. For most of human history, people learned about events days, weeks, even months after they occurred. And somehow, they survived. They made decisions. They lived meaningful lives. The idea that you must be constantly updated on breaking developments is an illusion created by the 24-hour news cycle. Almost nothing requires your immediate knowledge or response, and the constant state of alert that comes from trying to track everything as it happens doesn't make you more informed. It makes you more reactive, more stressed, and less capable of deep understanding. Seek out information sources that don't rely on outrage and urgency. Long-form journalism, books, documentaries, analysis that provides context and nuance rather than just triggering emotions. When you consume media that's designed to help you understand rather than designed to keep you clicking, your relationship with information changes. You start to realize how much of what poses as news is actually just entertainment designed to provoke. And once you see that, it becomes much easier to walk away from it. Finally, recognize that breaking the cycle doesn't mean becoming uninformed or disconnected. It means being more intentional about how you inform yourself and how you connect with others. The world is genuinely complex, and there are real things worth paying attention to, but you can't think clearly about them when you're in a constant state of information overload and emotional activation. The clearest thinking, the most useful action, the deepest understanding, these all require space, quiet, time to process and reflect, and you can't have any of that when you're trapped in the scroll. The companies that built these systems understand your psychology better than you do. They have teams of people whose full-time job is figuring out how to keep you hooked. But you're not powerless. You can learn how these systems work. You can recognize when they're acting on you, and you can choose, deliberately and repeatedly, to step outside of them. Not perfectly, not forever, but more often, more consciously. And every time you make that choice, you're retraining your brain, weakening the old patterns and building new ones. Doomscrolling feels impossible to stop because it's been engineered to feel that way. But engineering works both ways. If behavior can be conditioned, it can also be reconditioned. If patterns can be built, they can also be broken. You are not the lever-pressing pigeon in Skinner's box. You're the scientist who can see the box for what it is, understand how it works, and walk away from it. The news will still be there tomorrow. The outrage will still be there. The disasters and conflicts and scandals will continue regardless of whether you witness them in real time. But your attention, your time, your mental energy, your peace of mind, these are yours. And they're too valuable to hand over to systems that profit from keeping you anxious, angry, and endlessly scrolling toward nothing. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and share your thoughts in the comment. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe.